Hi everyone. With the K-pop invasion, is that what we're calling it? Is that what I'm gonna call it? I don't know. So with this K-pop being kind of taken in by other countries around the world, there's been a strange sort of realization that why is the English so bad sometimes? If you don't know what I'm talking about, here are a few examples.
Never mind about a thing. Make a love, baby. Just make a love. Feel it in my heart. So now. Just close your lips. Shut your tongue. Careless, careless. Shoot anonymous, anonymous. Motherless, motherless. No one will care about me.
I'm addict, I'm addict, I'm addict, I'm addict, I'm addict, I'm addict, I'm addict. Hey boy, you make me feel like weaker. Don't worry, baby, now I'm falling in love with you. It's like cushion, feel so wide, touch the sky, feel so tight, day and night. Hello, my precious, the other lady follows.
Every day a shock, every night a shock.
What the hell was that? You might be wondering, how can this happen? I thought that Koreans knew more English than that. Because maybe some of you do know that the Korean education system is really strict, and the Korean education system requires that students have to start speaking English, or start learning English anyway, in grade 3, which would be, I think, UK primary 4, and you're about 8 to 10 years old. A lot of parents, because the school system is super competitive, they will actually pay for their kids to get private tutors in English before that grade 3 starts, and continue it through like high school, but graduation, sometimes even into university. And they also sometimes will pay for these hagwon, which are these after school or outside of school extra classes that are all about rote memorization. It's translated in Korean, it's translated to academy. But an academy, I think, is pretty different of a concept. A hagwon, I've heard been translated as a cram school, and I think that's more of an accurate translation, unfortunately. Some of them will hire English speakers that are nannies, or just tutors that come in to like play with the baby and just speak English to the baby. And you might be thinking that's really cool to do that, and gosh, I wish we did something like that where I live, or especially if you guys are in the US, I wish we did something like that in the US, because gosh, our school system sucks. And that's all well and good until you remember that it's all part of this really strict education system that's part of a really strict social concept, that there's only one form of success, basically. And that's slowly changing, thankfully. A lot of Koreans really don't like that system, but how do you change an entire culture? So everybody just kind of, you just do it because you have to. There's no real way to change it, sort of thing. It does in part contribute to the fact that Korea has the highest suicide rate in the world, and so it's not super great. I'm not saying the US education system is any better, but I think that's a talk for another video. So what the hell, how do we end up with this, okay? The thing is, just because you study something doesn't mean you're good at it. So for example, a lot of students have to study math as part of their mandatory school program, and they have to study, this mathematics stuff all throughout their school career, basically. But that doesn't mean that every student that graduates is like ready to rock and roll with calculus all the time, especially 10 years after they've taken these courses, especially if they never took those courses because they were always stuck in like remedial math or had to repeat math classes. And that's the same sort of problem that happens in Korea and anywhere. Just because you learned it doesn't mean you're good at it, and even if you're good at it, if you haven't done it for a while, you're gonna lose it, So that's sort of the issue. But the thing that we should kind of go back to is, why do Koreans have to learn English at all? And the reason for that is because Korea knows that, like everybody knows, in order to really be a big player as an international company, you need to at least have English speakers, if not English and Mandarin, and I think now English, Mandarin, Arabic, and Russian speakers at your company. That is going to help you out a big, big amount. The problem is, and this is the reason that foreigners are brought over to teach English, or at least teach pronunciation, Koreans take tests. That is their thing. There's a saying that American baseball players train to hit a home run, but Japanese baseball players train to hit really good doubles and triples. And it just kind of shows the mentality. You know, it's like Americans are training for that one big thing that could happen at the cost of it's not necessarily highly probable, versus Japanese people just, you know, they have this a concept of doing things in, you know, a good way, a quality way, and not necessarily going out of their way to maybe get that one home run, but to make sure that they're just hitting consistently good stuff. And I don't know a lot about Japanese culture, so I can't exactly say that that is accurate or not. But if we were to bring it over to Korea, so the American is doing the home runs and the Japanese person is doing the you know, the singles and doubles and triples, and the Korean is learning what a bat was made out of and then being tested on it and then being hit if they're incorrect on their answer. The public school system can't hit kids anymore, but the Hagwon system still can, unfortunately. So that would be the biggest difference. So Koreans take tests, and the tests are usually written tests. That's the big problem. Taking a written exam for a lot of other courses is usually fine. It's a way to get people's understanding. And yeah, there is test anxiety and stuff to account for, but overall, it is an appropriate approach for testing retained knowledge. That is not true when you're learning a language. You have to not only be able to write the language, but you have to be able to hear the language and respond. So not just read and write, but to hear and respond in writing or in speaking. You have to be able to speak the language, and that's not really focused on in Korea. That's the big problem. Koreans test for vocabulary. It's almost like the whole Korean education system is like an SAT prep practically. It's just to learn vocabulary, both useful and obscure. And then how to decide which of these variations I should put into this part of the sentence, because the ending either looks like it should be a verb or looks like it should be an adjective, something like that. So it's looking at English as more of a puzzle to solve as opposed to a language to communicate. And that's another part of the problem. So now you've gone through a system where you have to learn a language that maybe you feel like you're not going to use. You aren't really learning how to speak it, and you're just learning a bunch of words. So by the time that you're like 21 and in a K-pop group, you just kind of throw a bunch of words out because that's okay to do in Korea. Now, I think that's probably a fair thing to say in a lot of other countries. I'm sure that there's signs written in Spanish in parts of California that make no sense to native Spanish speakers, but people use it because it sounds similar. Or the whole Italian speak for Starbucks, for example. So I've heard people criticize that because based on actual Italian, which is what Starbucks' system or talking is usually loosely based on, it doesn't really work. One example would just be a macchiato. Like a macchiato means marked with foam. So a macchiato is foam in a cup that you put an espresso over. A macchiato is not a bunch of milk and vanilla flavoring and a shot of espresso or two covered in caramel sauce. That is not a macchiato. So that's, you know, an issue. So that happens in Korea. But on top of that, there's some special problems that are less likely to happen in an Indo-European language as they are to happen in a language that's not that, in regards to speaking English. And it would be the opposite too. So there's some issues with something called Konglish. And Konglish, it can mean like one of three different things or a combination of all these things. And I'm sure there might be one I'm forgetting. So if I am, please, you know, ask about it or say, hey, you forgot this one. So the first one is words that sound a little different because there's no sound equivalent in Korean. And that's true with anything. I get really frustrated when expats in Korea make fun of Koreans for they can't pronounce R. There's no R in Korean. There's no L in Korean. There is a halfway sound that is like as if you're saying R, but roll like flicking your tongue as if you're saying L. It's this halfway sound. And that is a Korean sound, which a lot of foreigners can't pronounce. So they're making fun of Koreans for not being able to speak English in a country that doesn't require them to speak English all the time every day, whereas they're in Korea unable to pronounce things, and they live in this country, so they should be able to at least basically pronounce the language. So they don't understand the hypocrisy with that, and that's really irritating. So that's one form of Konglish. The second form of Konglish is taking an English word that already exists, but using it the wrong way. So that, I don't get that. I really don't. And I'm not sure if there's something that's going on in the US now that's sort of like that. The closest I can think of is to call any sour-y cabbage kimchi. I don't know. I've seen like people put kimchi on a lot of stuff because Korea is pretty popular these days. So kimchi is kind of a popular thing, and they'll put kimchi on there, and it's not kimchi. So kimchi is, you make it a certain way, and it's not that. So I think that might be the closest. But then the other one is like just totally fucking made shit up. So we'll kind of go through that. I've got a little list open here from 90daykorean.com/Konglish. So a good example would be something like polka. So polka is pronounced that way because Koreans have a hard time with R, so sometimes they just throw it away. They don't have an F, and with some exception, you can't really put a consonant at the end of a word, so you gotta add a vowel to it, and that's the So polka is how Koreans say fork. And I've talked to my students about this, so you can't just throw away sounds just because they're hard to pronounce. But that's not a criticism of Koreans speaking English. That's a criticism of anybody trying to learn a new language. So when I say you can't just say 타야, 캐릭터, you can't do that. If you're trying to learn this language and you're paying to be here to learn this language, so obviously you care about learning it, you cannot just throw away sounds. And I give the example of 떡, and 떡 is something that it's got a double D sound that we just don't have in English. That's really hard for non-Koreans to even hear the difference. So like if I say 덕, 떡, and tok, maybe you think I'm doubling up on a sound, but there's actually 3 different sounds there, and Koreans can hear 3 different sounds. I don't know who else has double D sounds in their language. If you do, please let me know. So I said that's really hard for English people to pronounce. Can I just say 억? And they're like, no, of course not. That doesn't even make sense. I'm like, okay, so if I can't just throw out words because they're hard to pronounce, neither can you. Or throw out sounds because they're hard to pronounce, then neither can you. So that's one. Juice is another one. So it's juice, but you got to add that at the end. Pija because there's no Z sound in Korean, so they just say J. Similar to this like pija or juice sound is sandwich. So it's sandwich, sandwich. So in this case, if you're ending with a CH, you can't do that, and so you want to attach an I, and there's like rules and reasons to do that. And then we got that D sound again because we can't end with like that consonant, so it's sandwich. And I have to explain to Koreans like to put that E sound at the end of a word, because a lot of them when they're trying to say lunch will say lunchy, or church they'll say churchy. You can't really do that because that in English that sort of makes it sound like you're talking to a child, and so you sound really strange when you do that. So it's something just to learn. For words that they just bring over, like loan words, but they're using the wrong one. One that happened was I had these like little guys. They were like 8, and they were doing some writing. And one said, "Teacher, cunning," and pointing to like this girl next to him. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. Cunning. She's cunning. She's a sharp thinker, a quick thinker, thinks outside the box, sly, slick. I think those things when I think of the word cunning. And he kept saying like, no, cunning, and pointing to her. And I was like, cool, yeah. And then he mimicked the motion of what he was trying to express. And I said, oh, she's cheating. Oh, that's different. So like I stopped the whole class and I was like, this is cunning and this is cheating. And like, then, okay, get back to your assignment, you know. Why would you bring in a word that's, I can't even imagine like with cunning, if you're talking about cunning in a cheating sense, maybe as long as you don't get caught and it's really creatively done, then you could say it's cunning. I'm not sure. I don't know how, cunning is almost like a morally ambiguous concept, maybe in some uses of that word, but it's not like specifically wrong, you know? It's not against the rules specifically. And that's what cheating is. So that was really difficult to figure out what that meant. Another one is obaite, or obaite, but people just kind of make it sound like obaite. This is overeat. And that's the word that they're bringing over, the loan word, overeat. And the meaning is vomit. Like, I can kind of see that. You eat too much and then you vomit, but if you're gonna bring in loan words anyway, why not bring in the right one? Not really sure why that happens, and again, I'm sure that happens in other countries too. This is not like a Korean specific thing. So vomit, there's a lot to choose from. There's puke, there's Ralph, there's upchuck, there's a lot of different words, but yeah. Gagman, so gagman. A gagman is a comedian. Not like a guy into BDSM or somebody that's like a victim of a hostage situation. Okay, so that's a gag man. So that's kind of fun. Trying to think. Sharp. Sharp is a mechanical pencil. Okay, so you know, sharp has a meaning. I guess if it's a sharp thing, but again, sharp has a meaning in English as an adjective, and I think some people in English, please correct me if I'm wrong because I didn't look it up before the video, I think those are also considered to be syringes. Is that what I'm thinking? But not mechanical pencils, okay? Or magic, magic, that sounds pretty rad. That is like a permanent marker. So they were thinking like magic marker, just shorten it to magic. Can't really do that. Cider. I was offered cider at work, like my first job. And I was like, we can drink at work. We can drink cider at work. You guys have cider here? And they're like, mm-hmm. I'm thinking, okay, let's do it. Let's do cider at work. Yeah. Okay. Let's be a little, yeah, you know, like you would never be able to do this in the US, but drinking in public is legal in Korea and you would never do that in the US. So, hey, maybe they have a totally different attitude about drinking at work. And then she brings me like a lemon lime soda, you know, like a Sprite or 7-Up type soda. And I was just like, it's soda, you know, or it's Sprite, or, you know, what is this? And she's like, yeah, but it's cider. It's like, cider's like a fruit beer. It's like a beer, but it's made with fermented stuff, or, you know, it's totally different from this. And so she was surprised, you know, so that was a good time. Eye shopping, which is not purchasing a new false eye. It is window shopping. Sign is signature. That one I can kind of see, like sign here, or did you sign this, something like that. But signature, that's the word. Most interesting one I think is consent. So I know with with people being more aware of things like sexual harassment and stuff, rape, consent's really important, and that's great that word was brought over, right? Except it means electrical outlet. I guess you got your outlet and then you got like your plug. I don't know where that came from. I don't know, because I don't ask the outlet for consents. So I like, even with that analogy, you know, I know that even with like items, this is, you know, a male end and a female end. So even with that sex kind of analogy, you don't ask for consent. So why would you even call it a consent? And that's really difficult, because the big problem with this, and the problem that we saw in like the K-pop stuff, is people think it's actual English. That's the big problem. So on top of that, in Korean, you can just kind of mix and match sounds of a word. Usually the first syllable of like two words you can kind of pull off and put together. That's sort of a thing in English to make like a combination word. That's kind of a concept, but it's not number one. Number one, everyone kind of understands sort of what it means. Like hangry, that's sort of an idea. That would be, I guess, a good one, hangry. But it's not something we do normally, and the way that you do it in English is to kind of preserve the sounds for both of the words that you brought in. But with Korean, it's just you bring in the first syllables of each word. So a good example would be chicken 맥주. So chicken is chicken, is fried chicken, and 맥주 is the Korean word for beer. So chicken 맥주, chimek. Chimek means chicken and beer. So you can ask your friend, hey, after work, do you want to go get some chimek? And that would be something to do. Can't really do that in English though. So if you come to Korea and someone thinks you're really cool and your outfit's on point today or something, or if you make friends with like a Korean exchange student or a Korean tourist in your country and they want to remember you, they are going to ask you for a selka. And you'll be like, what's that? And they'll keep saying selka, because to them that's an English word. And you're just like, what the hell are you talking about? And they're going to feel really embarrassed because they're like, my pronunciation's so bad, because Koreans have this big understanding that their pronunciation is terrible, and we'll sort of explain why. So they have this understanding of that, and they feel bad, and so they'll take out their phone and kind of mimic with their hand to like come over and stuff, and you're like, oh, a selfie. Oh. And to them, that's like, what is that, a selfie? But selka is self camera. That's where it comes from. Or, what am I doing right now? Like, what's my thing that I do? What's my hobby? BJ. I am a broadcasting jockey. See, I make these vlogs, which you can just listen to, because they're not actual videos, I guess, because I'm not really doing anything that you need to watch. So I'm a vlogger, and yeah. Me and my BJs. It's a good time. Can't really do that. You can call them a podcaster, you can call them a vlogger, but you can't really, you can say a person that makes videos about stuff, where I do like a radio thing, but not on the radio, but like for the internet, something, you can describe it. You wouldn't call them a BJ. Because see, they think, well, some people have names that are initialized. So like, if your name is David John, then you can call yourself DJ. And so when it comes time to interact with foreigners, for anybody, not just Koreans, sometimes it's difficult for the other group to understand how to pronounce your name. So you can either let them pronounce it incorrectly and just be fine with that. Choose a name that they would be familiar with in their country. Choose a word or similar sounding part of your name that doesn't actually mean anything, but it's easy for them to pronounce. Or you can, in the case of Koreans, they think, well, there's like words like DJ and stuff, and if my name is Minsuk, then I can just say, just call me MS, which doesn't really work either. I didn't think that through, but that's the problem, okay? So when we have like names that are put into initials, we have a certain idea of what letters will be there, but okay, MS, I guess we'll call you MS. So you can't really do that with other stuff though, and they think that you can, and they end up doing that. And so I try to explain to Koreans, like, you can't just start cutting up words. And I give this example where I have two friends named Jiho, and one Jiho friend lives in this place, and one Jiho friend lives in this place, and that's really hard for me to like talk about them, because my friends will always ask me, well, are you talking about Jiho from this place? Are you talking about Jiho from this other place? And so I'll say, that's all right, and this way we can figure it out. I'll just call this one, and I just start, I take the name of the place, and I take the first part, the first syllable, and I'll call this one buji, and I'll call this one jamji. And they didn't see it coming, so they all start laughing because it's such a shock. But jamji is like a way to say like a baby's penis in like a cute way. So I guess that's a thing kind of internationally, is to like a wee wee or something, you know. So it's totally ridiculous. You can't just do that with somebody else's language, because those words maybe already exist. Maybe those words are sexual. Maybe they don't really work in this context. So it's something totally different. So why does this pronunciation problem keep happening? You might want to know. So they, I think I mentioned that they don't really focus on pronunciation with it, to the point though that your English teacher may not even know how to speak English. That's pretty bad. So it sucks, but the alphabet will be pronounced something like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q or Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, G. That is the alphabet in Konglish. But that is the alphabet they're taught by their English teachers. And you might wonder, what the hell sound was that for R? They're taught to make an R sound, you have to roll your tongue all the way to the back of your mouth. R, R. And that's one of the reasons I started putting in my tongue ring to teach adults, so they can watch the little shining metal ball in my mouth to see it a little easier, like we're for tongue placement. But you can see it very easily. R, R, R. Like, how rabbit? How would you say that? Rabbit. And on top of that, with that rolling tongue, we hear an L sound, because that's what we're expecting from a rolling tongue sound, is an L. So rabbit is what comes out, a car. And like, how, and I tell him, like, I'm so sorry, no wonder why you thought this was such a hard letter to pronounce. All of your Korean teachers have taught you, like, this is the wrongest way to say it. I don't even know where this came from. So we get this weird pronunciation, we get this, everybody kind of knows English anyway, but they don't remember all of it, so we'll just use like the shortest version. Like in the clip I showed you, I'm addict, instead of I'm an addict, or I'm addicted. You know, they can kind of put those two words together anyway. I'm surprised actually she didn't say I'm holic, because they'll use holic as its own thing, like alcoholic or chocoholic. They'll just say blah blah holic, or they'll just say holic, which just means like I really like something. So I'm surprised she didn't say I'm holic. But yeah, they kind of know these words. It's kind of, you can kind of just use words however you want. You can make stuff up. It's difficult to remember some parts of speech from, you know, other languages' grammar. So stuff like the I'm addict, I like to use the example again, instead of an addict, they will drop that out, or they'll use it incorrectly, like make a love instead of make love, or make a relationship, or get together, or something like that. Sometimes the word is correctly translated, and the concept you think translates, but it doesn't. Like the Korean verb 놀다 means to play, but you use it for children and for adults, in the sense of it can also be like we hang out together. So when, you know, an adult says, yeah, I was playing with my friend this weekend, or a little, like a teenager says, I played with my friends, I'm like, oh, what'd you play? Like, did you go, you know, play a sport? Did you play a game? You know, what did you play? And they'll say, you know, we went to the movies. Like, that's hangout. Like, so they're not taught this colloquial stuff. They're just taught this other stuff. So that's where it all comes from. I hope that it'll change, because unfortunately, especially if you're a Koreaboo or something, this is what a lot of people see from Korea. A lot of people don't live here, and a lot of people, unfortunately, are not interested in learning more by reading things or watching documentaries or what have you. That tends to be just like a nerd thing, and I'm totally cool with that, but it's unfortunate that people will take this piece, like I'm cool with doing it. I like to read up on it, but if I'm not interested in the subject enough to read up on it, I'm not going to assume this little bit that I know is everything there is to know. But unfortunately, some people do. And you know, it's not to say that's taken, you know, really well either. That like people in the U.S. or Canada or Australia that think they like Korea or think they can speak Korean do it super well because they're not Korean, then Koreans just suck, you know, whatever. It's not to say that at all. Koreaboo compilations are perfect for this, and it's like they miss all these culture points, and it's kind of interesting. I've seen I love Oppa because he's so kawaii, or sayonara chingus. So chingu means friend in Korean, and sayonara, which I'm probably mispronouncing, means like goodbye in Japanese, and kawaii means cute in Japanese, and oppa means technically big brother, but it's used as like a cute way, like a honey or sweetie sort of thing from women to men, because the word only works from women to men. Younger women to older men only works for that. So that is what they make a mistake. Or there was, I think, a perfect example. Somebody was doing this like chicken feet video, and like I believe that maybe she speaks some Korean because she felt comfortable enough to try to make a sentence that I hadn't heard from Koreaboos, which, by the way, I've totally shown my teenage students Koreaboos, and they fucking love it. They think it's hilarious. Like, they love it that it's so cringe-inducing that they'll watch it to laugh at. Like, it's not like, oh, I love that Korean culture is spreading. Like, no, they are like, what the fuck are they thinking? Which one of my students actually said in the middle of the video. So like I believe she can speak some Korean, but like her understanding of the culture is like way off. And so there's this thing that you can do in pictures as a Korean to look cute. So like usually teenage or young adult women, they you know want to look cute, and so they'll do extra steps to look cute in a picture. It applies all around. Like if you take a passport photo in Korea, they will Photoshop the shit out of it to make it look your best. I don't know how that is legal, but that's what they will do automatically. My visa photo, I am so white, I blend into the background. Literally, the wall behind me and my face are the same color. I don't even know how that happened. But anyway, so there's this thing you can do to puff out your cheeks to make them look really cute, and it doesn't work for me because of the way that my lips do the thing when I puff out my face, and I don't know if I'm puffing my face out the wrong way or if it's just like my lips are that way because I'm not 18 anymore. So I don't know, maybe back when I was 20 I could do it, but like I'm 36 now, not gonna happen. But it's like they'll make these wrinkles, like it doesn't work to look adorable. But for other people, especially people that have a small mouth, that works really well for them. So they puff out their cheeks. It looks really cute. It's kind of like a pudgy thing, and I don't know, it's cute. You know, you want to pinch the cheeks. Well, this particular Koreaboo, she also had a small mouth, and so it worked for her when she like puffed out her cheeks. But then she looks at the camera and goes, "That never gonna happen." Like that's never gonna happen. That's never gonna happen. Make a fart sound when you're trying to be an adorable Korean like 19-year-old girl. Like that's just not what you're gonna do. And she's making the food. It's not really a recipe. You just kind of watch her making it in the kitchen. But one of the things she uses, like if I remember correctly, it's like a Chinese ingredient, like a Chinese sauce, which, I mean, maybe it tastes good, but that's not what you're gonna do. And if you're gonna show like, look at how Korean I am, I'm gonna share Korean culture with you, don't grab a Chinese sauce and start using it in a Korean thing. And then she sits down to eat. She's got this big bowl of chicken feet, which is what she was cooking, which I've never seen anybody else have chicken feet the way that Koreans have chicken feet. They're small and they have no bones, but they still have cartilage in them. But like places like in the US, where I think she was from based on her accent, or places like in Cambodia when I went there, you know, the bones are still in it, so it's gonna be a little different, but you know, that's okay. She tried. But she's got her ice water and she's got her paper towels, like a roll of paper towels, which if you have a roll of something for your hands at a table, it's going to be a roll of toilet paper. That's what people use. So it's a roll of toilet paper that she should have used. Ice water we don't have. It's just not a thing. Yeah, if you go to Starbucks, you could ask for water and then ask them to put ice in it, I guess. But because everything comes out of like a refrigerated filter unit in terms of going out to eat, where you know, a lot of people even at their home they have a filtered unit. I don't, but the bottled water that I buy I put inside of my refrigerator, or if you get a water filter at home, you put that inside your refrigerator, so you don't really make ice. So to have an ice water, that's not something to happen. But then she reaches in the bowl with her hands and pulls it up and starts eating. And of course, as an American, that's like totally a thing you do for something this sized. But that's not Korean whatsoever, to the point that when I went to TGI Fridays with some Korean friends, because they wanted to try this like American food, which, you know, again, it's just American food if you've never been to TGI Fridays. They got ribs and they immediately tried to eat it with chopsticks. And it wasn't rib meat, it was like ribs on the bone. And one of them was able to do it, but the two weren't able. And they're like, this is too difficult. Oh, you know what? This is Western food. We should be using a fork. Maybe that would make it easier. So each one like put the fork together on the plate to like help each other tear the meat off the bone, and then use the fork to eat the meat that's been torn off the bone. And in the meantime, I'm there like not telling them this is the way to eat it, but like eating with my hands. So it's sort of like a follow by example thing, but they just didn't pick up on it. You know, same as this gal didn't pick up on Koreans don't do that either. So it's, you know, it's not saying that this isn't a thing that's critical of Korea. This is something that happens internationally. This is just a thing that happens for so many different reasons, and all of the reasons almost always make sense, or at least have an explanation. So that's helpful. But now you guys know why, you know, every wanna pretty is a lyric that happens. So that's that. If you guys have any Konglish that you want me to like help you out, what are they trying to say, or how did this turn into that? Why, you know, if they're, I can understand the sentence they're trying to make, but why would they use these words? Then let me know. Post it. You can contact me in the details section below, like on Skype and stuff. You can send me those things. And if you're interested in this stuff, you know, you can always follow me on Patreon. I got some different videos and blogs and pictures that are up there exclusive for like as little as $1 a month, so that's pretty cool. But as